Namaskar and a very warm welcome. You're watching Vantage. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. The war in Ukraine is on, but another battle is intensifying in Russia. At the center of this, Yevgeny Prigozhin, a man who was earlier known as Putin's chef. These days, he likes to be called the Russian president's butcher. Prigozhin is escalating his war with Russia's military establishment. He's pulling his troops, the Wagner mercenaries, from Bakhmut. This is right after they declared victory over Ukraine, a claim that Kiev has contested. Prigozhin now says the war failed to achieve its purpose. And there's a serious threat of a revolution in Russia now. What's brewing? We'll get you the full story. Also on the show, Imran Khan's party is imploding. Over a dozen members have resigned. What will Captain Khan do next? We'll tell you all about this. Ron DeSantis has entered the 2024 presidential race, but his campaign is off to a rocky start. And the planet Jupiter is changing its colors. It's a story you don't want to miss. I'm Akanksha Swaroop, filling in for Palki Sharma. Let's have a quick look at the headlines first. Japan scrambles fighter jets after detecting Russian intelligence gathering aircraft. The incident took place off its coasts along the Pacific Ocean and Sea of Japan. This comes days after Japan hosted Ukrainian President Zelensky at the G7 summit in Hiroshima. China's Ukraine envoy to head to Moscow tomorrow. Li Hui will hold talks with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Last week, the Chinese diplomat met President Zelensky in Ukraine. Beijing is desperate to present itself as a peacemaker in the grinding conflict. Sudan's warring factions trade blame game over truce breach. The one-week-long truce has been violated several times since coming into effect on Monday. The latest ceasefire was negotiated by the US and Saudi Arabia. Just days ahead of the election runoff, Turkish opposition leader Suuz Erdogan Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu lodges a $50,000 lawsuit against the Turkish president over an online smear campaign. Kılıçdaroğlu finished almost 5 points behind Erdogan in the first round on May 14. The runoff is on Sunday. Net migration to the UK hit a record 606,000 in 2022, putting more pressure on the government. The Rishi Sunak administration has pledged to cut dependency on foreign labour. The record high figure includes those arriving from Ukraine after Russia's invasion. There's also been an influx from Hong Kong as China continues to clamp down on civil rights. El Salvador football authorities cancelled the national championship midway. The decision comes after a stampede at a game on Saturday killed 12 and injured hundreds. The competition had only reached the first leg of the quarterfinals. Let's begin with the war. No, this is not about Ukraine. I'm talking about what's happening inside Russia, specifically within Putin's inner circle. The story is about the men who lead Putin's offensive. Recently, the Russian side made a big claim. Moscow said they have captured Bakhmut. Ukraine has contested that claim. If true, this is a major win for Moscow. It should have been a reason to get optimistic. But instead, warnings are being raised. Yevgeny Prigozhin says there could be a revolution in Russia, one that could plunge Russia into turmoil. He's calling for martial law in the country. Prigozhin is Russia's most powerful mercenary. He leads the Wagner Group. He's a close ally of Vladimir Putin and the man on the front lines of the Russian offensive in Bakhmut. He has given an interview and he says this war could break up Russia.
All these divisions can end in what is a revolution, just like in 1917. First, the soldiers will stand up, and after that, their loved ones will rise up.
That was a message for the Russian elite. Prigozhin says a revolution could rock Russia. He's calling them out. What divisions was he talking about? Prigozhin says, as the war in Ukraine continues, Russia's rich and powerful are still leading lavish lifestyles. while the rest are being forced to join the war effort. Once again, Prigozhin has singled out Russia's defense minister, Sergei Shoigu. In this interview, Prigozhin refers to Shoigu's family members. He claims they are holidaying in Dubai, while the country is at war. This new interview is a scathing attack on the Russian elite. Prigozhin says their carefree lives could lead to a public uprising. Ordinary people could stand up against them and attack the elite with pitchforks. In his interview, he raises the spectre of a 1917-style revolution, when there was an uprising against the Tsar, Nicholas II. He and his family were executed by Bolsheviks, one of the leaders of the revolution. The movement ultimately swept Vladimir Lenin into power. Prigozhin is now warning this could happen again. It gets worse. A new video has come out. Prigozhin says the Wagner Group is now leaving Bakhmut.
We are leaving for the back areas.
Yes, we were told that we would be leaving. We are slowly moving back.
The main thing is to be careful, one unit at a time. Well, all the rest, before June 1, we'll all gather and transfer the positions to the military.
It will be done. We will complete the task given.
This video came out today. The Wagner chief says he has suffered heavy losses. The battle for Bakhmut. Wagner lost 20,000 of his soldiers. That's the claim from Prigozhin. So how should we see this latest tirade? Throughout this war, Prigozhin has had an axe to grind with the military establishment. Prigozhin had led the war effort in Bakhmut, but he has made more news for his feud with the Russian defense minister. He has accused him of denying Wagner ammunition and repeatedly threatened to withdraw from Bakhmut. Now he's intensifying his attacks. In that same interview, he said Ukraine is now stronger.
We spoke about denazification of Ukraine. We have made them a nation known all over the world. If at the beginning of the special operation they had, let's say, 500 tanks, now they have 5,000 tanks. If they had 20,000 men to fight with, now they have 400,000. How have we demilitarized it? It turns out that it is the other way around. We have militarized the hell of Ukraine.
Well, that sounds like an appreciation. Is Prigozhin rebelling against his boss, Vladimir Putin? Not quite. Prigozhin's loyalties still lie with the Russian president. He just hates the Russian defense minister.
Now for political credo. I love my motherland. I serve Putin. Shoigu is useless and we will fight on. That's it.
I serve Putin. Shoigu is useless. That's the message from Prigozhin. Perhaps that's why he is setting him up to fail. The Wagner chief now says they'll withdraw from Bakhmut by June 1. They'll hand over the charge to the Russian forces. Those soldiers who report to Shoigu. Meanwhile, Ukraine is intensifying its operations there. Ukrainian soldiers are on the outskirts of Bakhmut and they're trying to move in. So the fighting will intensify. But what about the infighting within Russia's top brass? Prigozhin's statements cannot be ignored. He's part of Putin's inner circle. His nickname is Putin's chef. That's also because Prigozhin once provided catering services to the Russian president. But these days, Prigozhin likes to be called as Putin's butcher. This is due to the central role of the Wagner in his war. But the Russian Defense Ministry doesn't like him either. When Russia claimed it captured Bakhmut, the statement from Moscow mentioned the Wagner forces, but it did not name Prigozhin. So there's clear infighting. It remains to be seen who comes out on top. Wagner isn't Russia's only problem. The war is slowly creeping inside their borders. And guess what? It's Russian citizens who are bringing it. A group of anti-Putin fighters are looking to capture Belgorod. It's a city in southern Russia. The Kremlin says the assault has been repelled, but the rebel fighters disagree. They claim the operation is still underway. So who are these Russian citizens fighting their own country? Why are they opposing Putin? And what is their end game? Our next report tells you all about it.
It's an Instagram offensive. Soldiers riding into town on tanks, clicking selfies at captured buildings. It's an offensive Russia did not expect. So who are these fearless fighters? Turns out they're Russians. Time for a rewind. May 22nd, Monday. The city of Belgorod wakes up to this scene. Plumes of smoke rising to the sky. There's been a cross-border incursion. Fighters aligned to Ukraine have struck. Their operation was a surprise, but their message even more.
We are Russians just like you. We are people just like you. We want our children to grow up in peace and be free people.
The fighters are not Ukrainian. They belong to two Russian groups, Russian Volunteer Corps and Freedom of Russia Legion. Both were formed last year. Their mission? To fight for Ukraine. These groups oppose Putin's control over Russia. Some also eulogize Imperial Russia. While their motives differ, their plan is clear: repel the Russian invasion. Many of these fighters have been deployed on the front line. On paper, Ukraine doesn't control them. But on the battlefield, they fight the same enemy. Monday was a turning point for these groups. For the first time, they took the fight to Russia. Belgorod is located near the border. It's just 40 kilometers from Ukraine. The residents were caught off guard.
First guns fired, then mortars, machine guns, the sound of machine guns, full-fledged, specifically. Nothing like this has happened since I lived here.
The fighting raged for 2 days. The Russian rebels claimed to have captured multiple villages, but soon the empire struck back. Russian military launched a counter-offensive. They say 70 fighters were killed, and the rest pushed back into Ukrainian territory.
We will continue to respond to such actions by Ukrainian militants, promptly and extremely harshly.
Fighting done, it was time for propaganda. Russia says the rebels used vehicles made by the United States. They also have pictures. But the rebels say it's just war. You make do with looted and captured equipment. Like this one. The rebels managed to capture a Russian armored truck. They brought it back to Ukraine, posed with it, and invited journalists to have a look. The rebels had a stern warning for Moscow. Expect more attacks.
Our future plans are entering new territories of the Russian Federation, which we will definitely enter. In principle, you should be just a little bit patient and wait just a couple of days to see us again on that side.
What does this daring cross-border attack mean for the war? It's the first time Russia was defending. So symbolically, it's important. It could also force Russia to reassign some troops. Putin cannot assume that his border towns are safe. These rebels could strike any time. So, what's his option? To take troops out of the front line and redeploy them. A small victory for Ukraine. Another consequence could be this. Russia uses this attack to escalate further, to push deeper into Ukrainian territory. It's certainly possible, especially since the rebels used Western equipment. Ukraine has distanced itself from the attack. They say, we don't control the rebels. But the Russian fighters tell a different story.
Planning, we could consult with them. We said, okay, we think this would be a proper attack on this, proper attack on that. What do you think? Is it a plausible aim? Is it like proper, good idea? Should we go here? Should we go there? So we could consult with them.
These fighters are a headache for Russia. They are well-trained, battle-hardened, and most importantly, not affiliated to Ukraine. At least not on paper. This helps them operate in the shadows, to strike wherever and whenever they want. For a change, it's Russia on the defensive.
Our next story is about Imran Khan. He's moving from one crisis to another and is facing challenges at every turn. Captain Khan simply cannot catch a break. Reports say he was added to Pakistan's no-fly list today. There's another problem. His party, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf or PTI, is imploding. There has been a series of resignations. More than a dozen leaders have parted ways. The list of prominent departures is getting longer. It now includes Shireen Mazari, the former Human Rights Minister, Fawad Chaudhry, the former Information and Broadcasting Minister, and Asad Omar, the former Finance Minister. He remains a member of Imran Khan's party, but he has stepped down from his leadership positions.
Under the current situation, it is not possible for me to personally play the role of leading the party, particularly after the 9th of May incidents. It is not possible for me. Therefore, I resign from the role of Tehreek-e-Insaf's Secretary General and from the members of its core committee.
Why are so many politicians leaving? Well, as far as these leading names are concerned, they all have suffered a crackdown. When Imran Khan was arrested, these leaders were picked up too. But they were released later. It seems they are now quitting politics just to avoid going to jail again. Did the country's army get to them? The leaders say they are not under any pressure to quit. But Imran Khan believes they are. Consider what he said yesterday, and I quote, "This is a crackdown that I have never seen in the history of Pakistan before. If you say that you are part of PTI, then you will face oppression and violence. You will be locked up. If you say the magic words, we are no longer in PTI, then you will be released." So according to Imran Khan, this indeed is a crackdown, and it might get worse. There's talking of banning Imran Khan's party. Pakistan's Defence Minister Khwaja Asif has spoken out. He says a ban is indeed being considered. On what grounds? Asif says Imran Khan's party has attacked the state. The Defence Minister was speaking to journalists last night. He said the PTI, that is Imran Khan's party, attacked the very basis of state, and this cannot be tolerated. Asif is referring to the unrest that happened after Imran Khan's arrest. There was a massive uprising. Khan's supporters had taken to the streets, and they spared no one, including the military establishment. Military installations were attacked. The unrest simmered after Khan's release, but the government vowed to punish his supporters. That's when the idea of banning PTI was mooted.
Apart from banning this group, there is no solution. And you said that Bilawal is not in favor of banning PTI. He is not. Bilawal said that they don't like to ban a political party. If their attitude and methods continue, I regret to say, then we shall have to do it.
So has the government made up their mind? A decision is yet to be taken. But if Islamabad does go ahead with this, how would it pan out? Well, the government cannot do it unilaterally. They will have to take this to the parliament. And even if the proposal is passed, the ban will be challenged in the courts. Already, the PTI has declared that they are ready for a legal fight if they are banned. What's their counter-argument? The PTI says the party cannot be blamed for the acts of few individuals. So the stage is being set for a bigger showdown. But it appears Imran Khan doesn't want to fight. Yesterday, he suggested a compromise.
मैं ये कमेटी बनाता हूं, मैं दो चीजें कहता हूं, दो चीजें कर दें। अगर इस कमेटी को ये बैठ के कह दें कि जी इमरान खान के बगैर पाकिस्तान बेहतर हो जाएगा और आपके पास कोई सलूशन है, मैं फिर से कहता हूं कि इस मुल्क की खातिर मैं छोड़ देता हूं, मैं पीछे हट जाता हूं। अगर आप ये कमेटी को समझा दें कि मेरे बगैर मुल्क बेहतर चलेगा, चले मैं मुल्क की खातिर ये भी छोड़ने के लिए तैयार हूं।
A negotiating committee. That is the latest proposal of Imran Khan. What will it do? Its purpose will be to negotiate a way out of this impasse. Imran Khan says he is willing to step aside. But is he really serious about this? That's unlikely. Polls say he is the most popular leader right now. But his problems are compounding. There are nearly 150 cases against him. So the fear remains that he could still be arrested. The army has declared an open war against him, and now his party has been fractured. How will the impasse end? Honestly, we do not know for sure, but we can say one thing. The climax of the story will be written in Rawalpindi and not Islamabad. Over to some US politics now. Donald Trump has a new challenger in the Republican Party. This man, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He's been hinting at running recently, but on Wednesday, he made it official. Just one problem though. The announcement went horribly wrong. DeSantis chose to do it on Twitter Spaces with Elon Musk. Both men were online and ready to go. But Twitter had a meltdown. Take a look.
Tonight, I'm pleased to introduce two individuals. He kept Florida's schools open and its economy thriving, while my state of California chose 2 years of learning loss and lockdowns that we have yet to fully.
So, I'm obviously very excited to have Governor DeSantis make this.
The feed kept getting cut out. The voices were muffled and the connection horrible. We still don't know what happened to Twitter, but Elon Musk is blaming the traffic. Around 250,000 people had joined the stream. Maybe the servers just couldn't take it. Either way, social media had a field day with it. Even DeSantis' rivals took jibes at him. Look at what President Joe Biden tweeted. This link works. It was a link to donate to the Biden-Harris campaign. Donald Trump wasn't far behind. He posted this meme video on Instagram. Have a look.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Ron DeSantis Twitter space.
Hello? Is my microphone working correctly?
George, can you just wait while we...
Hello? Can you hear me?
We can all hear you, George. Can you just hold on for a second?
Hilfa, I don't think they can hear me.
Hear you fine, George. Just speak to the
I don't think George knows how to use Twitter.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Can I please make my big announcement now? Everyone just...
Hello?
Just shut up, George.
Can somebody just mute George?
Memes aside, what does this announcement mean? Ron DeSantis is relatively new in politics. His career began in 2012. He was elected to the US House of Representatives. After that, he launched a Senate campaign. When that didn't work out, DeSantis ran for Florida governor. He won in 2018. A big reason for that was Donald Trump. Trump endorsed DeSantis. He also praised his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. It was a mentor-protege relationship. But once Trump left office, that changed. DeSantis had big ambitions. He had a national appeal and wanted to be president. So now both men are bitter rivals, but their politics is mostly similar. Hardcore conservatives, anti-LGBTQ, anti-abortion, and highly combative. But who holds the edge? Trump is still the favorite. A recent poll found that 53% Republican voters want Trump. Only 26% want DeSantis. So what's the strategy to turn it around? DeSantis has billed himself as Trump light. He realizes that attacking Trump is dangerous. He would lose support across the board. So his strategy is to present himself as a toned-down version of Donald Trump, not ideologically, but otherwise. For example, Trump has legal cases against him. DeSantis doesn't. Trump says the 2020 election was rigged. DeSantis doesn't. So the strategy is to get the best of both worlds, the hardcore Republicans and the moderates. DeSantis says his party must end the culture of losing. Listen in.
There is no substitute for victory. We must end the culture of losing that has infected the Republican Party in recent years. The tired dogmas of the past are inadequate for a vibrant future. Biden's allowed woke ideology to drive his agenda. We will never surrender to the woke mob.
That's his favorite attack. He keeps talking about the quote-unquote woke ideology. It makes him a very divisive figure. As governor, Ron DeSantis has pushed a hardcore conservative line. He has cracked down on the LGBTQ community, on abortions, on gender equality. Have I missed out on anything? Okay, wait, even climate action. His adverse views on these issues make him highly controversial, but they also make him very popular. Will it be enough to challenge Trump? Not yet. Some say DeSantis lacks charisma. Now, Biden and Trump aren't exactly charismatic charmers, but both of them score elsewhere. Biden is a Washington veteran. Trump is a celebrity and former president. DeSantis is neither. Plus, his foreign policy chops are untested.
I think we're going to see some changes from him in the next few weeks. I think he realizes that he's going to have to become more of a showman, while at the same time tacking in somewhat moderate directions. To try to do both of those is a challenge. If he's able to do it, he might be able to get more support and be a more viable challenger for Trump.
So the verdict is clear. DeSantis is popular, but not popular enough to challenge Donald Trump. And here's the latest from Germany. The country is looking to chip in. It's not a metaphor. I mean it literally. They are hoping to end Europe's semiconductor supply woes. It promises to be a challenging task. The basics first. Semiconductors or chips are everywhere. In our phones, in our appliances, even in our cars and in our weapons. But their supply chain is complicated. Most of the chips are produced in Taiwan, Japan and South Korea. If you consider the most advanced ones, around 90% are made in Taiwan, which means the supply chain is vulnerable. If China invades Taiwan, no more chips. So every country is looking to diversify supply. Germany is no different. They are leading the wider European push. The European Union's plan is to double its share in the chip market. It's 10% right now. They are aiming for 20% by 2030. To achieve this, the EU has unveiled the CHIPS Act. The plan is to mobilize $46 billion. And like I said, Germany is leading this push. They're the biggest economy in Europe. Plus, they have a knack for engineering. After all, the German car industry is world famous. Berlin is asking chip giants to invest in Germany. Last week, Chancellor Olaf Scholz traveled to South Korea. He asked Korean chip companies to set up plants in Germany. And how's the response? Not too bad. German chip maker Infineon is setting up a facility in Dresden. Total cost around $5.3 billion. US companies like Intel and Wolfspeed have also announced projects. But Germany is betting on the big fish. I'm talking about TSMC. It is arguably the most advanced chip maker in the world. It is based in Taiwan. It makes up more than 50% of all chip production. You get TSMC, you are sorted. Talks are underway with Berlin. The company says it will take a call by August. So Germany is doing a lot of things right. They are mobilizing funds. They are wooing East Asian giants. They are also giving political support. Does that guarantee success? Maybe not yet. Germany's chip push faces three challenges. Number one, economic uncertainty. Announcing projects is one thing, delivering it is another. Last year, Intel announced a project in Germany. Work was supposed to begin in early 2023, but so far there's no sign. The costs have been driven up by the war in Ukraine. Challenge number two, the lack of workers. Germany lacks 65,000 skilled workers, and chip making is a skilled job. So companies fear they will run out of labor, or worse, have to pay too much. Challenge number three, the cost-benefit analysis. Many experts ask whether the plan is worth all the effort. Germany will give away billions in subsidies, but that won't guarantee success. Neither will it ensure supply chain stability. My point is simple. Germany will be spending a lot of money for very little gains. So citizens are also doubtful. They don't see any logic in the plan, especially not in the middle of a cost of living crisis. So that's where Germany's chip plan stands. Desirable, but too ambitious. It's a dilemma most countries face, even India. Last year, India announced a $10 billion plan to become a chip-making hub. But the plan is yet to take off. We're talking about established supply chains here. Replacing them won't be easy. It will require major innovation and lots of money. Both appear lacking right now. Let's say you want to throw away some tattered clothes or those old electronic wires you never use anymore. What would you do about it? There are a number of options. But is dumping this waste in your neighbor's backyard one of them? Hopefully, the answer is no. Since you are not Europe, because that's exactly what the continent has been up to. It is taking used clothes, electronics, and everything in between, and just dumping it in the global south. That is, Asia and Africa. These continents have become the ideal dumping ground for 90% of Europe's clothing waste. But that's not all. Europe is the biggest generator of e-waste in the world, most of which finds its way to landfills in Asia and Africa. And the number of waste exports have only risen over the years, despite several warning calls, growing environmental pressures, and health problems among millions. Our next report brings you more. The global south has become a dumping ground for Europe. Anything and everything Europe doesn't need is dumped in Asia and Africa, especially countries like India, Pakistan, Togo, Cameroon, Tunisia, and Ghana. And this waste has an eclectic mix of useless things, but it's mostly either used clothes or electronic waste. Let's first talk about textile waste. 90% of Europe's used clothes end up in Asian and African landfills. And that's a lot, because Europe generates a staggering 5.8 million tons of textile waste every year. That's about 11 kg of waste per person. In 2019, Africa received over 60% of these used clothes. It used to be the primary destination for unwanted exports. But Asia has emerged as a worthy competitor. Today, it receives 41% of Europe's textile waste, while Africa gets 46%. So Asia and Africa are facing the slow burn of Europe's fast fashion choices. And it isn't just textile waste that is ailing the global south's landfills. It's also electronic waste. This includes old phones, kitchen appliances, and even automobiles. Basically, all kinds of electronic devices that are rejected by Europeans. Everything that is no longer worthy for European streets makes it to the southern continents. In fact, even cars that have been involved in terrible accidents are exported to these places. So basically, the brunt of self-serving Europe's selfish choices is being borne by Asia and Africa. This waste is also a safety hazard. It is sometimes dangerous for the people who reuse it. And it is often hazardous to the health of landfill workers. They develop lifelong diseases because of such waste. But this trash is not only bad at micro levels, it is bad for the world as a whole. As amazing as fast fashion sounds, the textile waste it generates is terrible. It is the fourth highest source of environmental pressure, one of the biggest reasons behind climate change. And now it is washing up on the shores of Africa. Meanwhile, e-waste not only creates toxic air pollution, it creates a hazardous working environment. Workers develop burns, back problems, infected wounds, and respiratory problems. You must be wondering, why are Asia and Africa suffering from this? Why does Europe rely on them so heavily? Because these two continents are low-cost manufacturing hubs. Europe depends on them for its products, a result of which is the remaining surplus, the leftover from manufacturing like clothes and other products. This practice is great for business in Europe, but it's terrible for the environment. And Europe isn't blind to these facts. Yet it refuses to take responsibility. Waste management isn't rocket science, so Europe needs to do better. Countries must consume less, produce less, and recycle more. They need sustainable waste management practices, because it is criminal for countries to treat others as their personal junkyard. Climate change is not waiting for no one. So Europe needs to wake up and smell the toxins it's dumping in Asia and Africa. Cyclones, floods, drought, wildfires. These disasters are taking place all around the world, at this very moment, in fact. There's a cyclone battering the US territory of Guam in the Pacific Ocean, floods in Spain and Afghanistan, drought in the Horn of Africa, wildfires in Canada. All of this is happening as we speak. These extreme weather events are leaving behind a trail of destruction, and the results are catastrophic, both on people and the economy. The World Meteorological Organization has come out with a report. It details the impact of extreme weather over a 50-year period. The death toll is over 2 million. More than 2 million people were killed due to extreme weather events in the last 50 years. Over 90% of these deaths took place in developing countries. The economic losses are worth over $4 trillion. Our next report brings you the details.
It should be common knowledge that people should revere Mother Nature or be prepared to face the consequences. Humans seem to have forgotten this bit of wisdom, and we've been paying the price. extreme weather has taken 2 million lives over the past 50 years. This is according to a report from the World Meteorological Organization, or WMO. 2 million people have been killed due to extreme weather between 1970 and 2021. And remember, this is just extreme weather, like cyclones, floods and droughts. We aren't talking about things like earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Those are considered natural disasters. Extreme weather is different. It's something that human activity can aggravate, which we have done. Since we keep burning fossil fuels and releasing greenhouse gases, this makes extreme weather events more frequent and more calamitous. Let's take a look at what's going on in just the last few days. We first turn to the Pacific island of Guam. It's a US territory in the Pacific. The people there just faced Super Typhoon Mawar. The tropical cyclone battered the island with wind speeds of over 240 kilometers per hour. It has left now, but the island still faces strong winds.
Half a day and good morning. I am so glad we are safe. We have weathered this storm. The worst has gone by. But we are going to continue experiencing tropical storm winds up to about 40-50 miles per hour. So I ask you again to please stay home for your protection and your safety.
Meanwhile, America's northern neighbor is facing dozens of wildfires. Canada's Alberta province is ablaze. Thousands of firefighters from Canada and the US are trying to get the fires under control.
There are 71 wildfires in the forest protection area of Alberta. 20 of those are out of control. So far this year, we've responded to 520 wildfires, burning more than 1,017,000 hectares.
It's so bad, Australia and New Zealand have pledged to send their firefighters to help out. Then there's Spain. It's facing the full bouquet of disasters. Hailstorms in the north, wildfires and drought in the center, and floods in the east and south.
There is no water and the reservoir has dried up. We don't know what happened, but they tried to fix it and now we can't drink the water. They're offering us water in trucks.
I've lived here since January, and the shame of being from Murcia is that every time it rains, it pours, and everything gets flooded. Because really no effective solutions are put in place to avoid this from happening. So now it's time to check whether insurance will cover all of that.
Afghanistan has to deal with extreme weather along with everything else it's going through.
At 12:30 during the day, there were a lot of floods. All the villages were flooded and 12 villages are completely destroyed. We have 4 deaths, we have 1 wounded, and we have faced a lot of damages. And we expect our government to reach out to us to support us.
You'll notice how the developed nations were talking about economic damages. The Afghan person spoke of deaths. That contrast is highlighted in the WMO report. Over 90% of the deaths from extreme weather events impact developing countries. Asia and Africa are particularly vulnerable. Extreme weather has killed over 500,000 people in Bangladesh alone. The country regularly faces cyclones and floods. Then there's the Horn of Africa region. Droughts killed over 500,000 people in just Ethiopia, Sudan and Somalia between 1970 and 2021. And another drought is currently underway. The world knows this, but it isn't doing enough.
Crisis atop of crisis is threatening the lives and livelihoods of millions across the Horn of Africa. The longest drought on record. Mass displacement after years of conflict and insecurity. Skyrocketing food prices. And now chaos and fighting have engulfed Sudan, radiating instability across the entire region. I call on donors and the international community to urgently fund the 2023 humanitarian response plan for the region. Today, they are just close to 20% funded, and this is unacceptable.
Developed countries pledged about $2.4 billion yesterday. They were quite happy about it, even though the UN says it needs $7 billion. Over the years, rich nations have paid the lion's share for humanitarian assistance, and the rebuilding of infrastructure after extreme climate events. The US alone suffered economic losses worth $1.7 trillion since 1970. That's about 40% of the global losses due to extreme weather. Yet, despite the cost, the developed world is still slow to fight climate change. Maybe because they have the money to burn on recovery. The developing world, however, does not have that money. And it pays for the insults to Mother Nature with innocent lives.
They say storms always pass. That may be true, but only as long as you're not living on Jupiter. This planet is known for its constant storms and sheer size. It is our solar system's largest planet. Jupiter is so huge, it can fit over 1,300 Earths inside it. It is the fifth planet from the Sun and one of the brightest objects in the sky. But with that, it also makes science seem a bit dull sometimes, because so far, no one has been able to fully understand this planet. It's a big cosmic conundrum and a colourful one. Why do we say so? Because Jupiter keeps changing its colours and no one could understand why. Well, until now. Scientists have finally discovered why Jupiter's colours keep changing. Our next report tells you all about it.
This is Jupiter, the biggest planet in our solar system, just doing its own thing in space. But as relaxed as it seems, it can be quite temperamental. Mostly because it's so gassy all the time. This doesn't have much to do with what Jupiter had for dinner. Its moods are ever changing. But one thing is constant. Jupiter is always stormy. It has a very thick atmosphere and really strong winds which create complex weather patterns. And Jupiter's clouds are constantly pushed around because of this ever-present storm. But these clouds don't work like they do on Earth. They form bands which swirl around. And from where we see Jupiter, these bands look like stripes. Like in these visuals you see, it almost seems like this planet has stripes, which is made of different colors. But here's the catch. And this is where Jupiter's temperamental behavior comes in. This planet's stripes aren't constant. They not only move around a lot, along with the moving clouds, but they also change color. Now, that's where the real trust issues begin. Why, you ask? Because you never know which color Jupiter decides to wear on a given day. Sometimes, it seems to be donned in pastels. Other times, the color palette looks dark and almost angry. And these colors change every 4 to 5 years. But as interesting as this so-called outfit change is, it is also one of science's greatest mysteries. For the longest time, scientists didn't know what made Jupiter change its colors, but now we have an answer. Thanks to the astronauts from the University of Leeds, they have published new research. It is based on information from NASA, whose spacecraft has been orbiting Jupiter for about 7 years now. So why does Jupiter change its colors? It has a lot to do with the planet's magnetic field, which is extremely intense, about 20,000 times stronger than Earth's. Every few years, there are changes in Jupiter's field, and these changes happen deep inside the planet, about 50 kilometers below the gas giant's surface, the result of which is seen on the planet's surface. Think of it as a churning on the planet. This affects Jupiter's weather. Sometimes it takes quite personally, considering its constant storms. So, as this weather goes a little crazy, causing the color of stripes to change, there are still many unanswered questions. But this advance is surely a leap forward. Hopefully, research will better our understanding about Jupiter and its ever-fluctuating moods.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story starting with Iran. The country has test-launched a ballistic missile. Iran says its missiles are an important retaliatory force against the US and Israel. In Guam, Typhoon Mawar has made landfall. The Category 4 storm has caused some major damage. We'll show you satellite images as well. In Australia, a massive fire broke out at a multi-story building in central Sydney. Eyewitnesses felt the ground shake before walls of the building collapsed. And finally, what makes May 25th significant? Taking you back in history, on this day in 1969, a military coup led by Commander Jafar Nimairi overthrew the government in Sudan. Nimairi ruled Sudan for more than 15 years. He was ousted in 1985 in another military coup led by his own defense minister. We leave you with that. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Email exchanges from inside the BBC, they talk about the risk of violating Indian laws. It's easier to rake up the freedom of speech debate, but does it give anyone a free pass to knowingly violate the law? America supports India because it needs India's support in return. And India is working with the US because it suits India's interests. This is how geopolitics works. Last night, he diffused a crisis with his defense minister. But today, Netanyahu was confronted with a new problem. His cabinet seems to have rebelled against him. The UK is looking at the Indian subcontinent to fill its coffers. That India seems to be negotiating from a position of power, like a partner and not a former colony.
Indian becoming a UK PM.
Well, it's not like that we are going to get the Kohinoor back. But at least India is on its way to the top. Huh?
But Gautam sir, there's actually not much to celebrate.
Why not? An Indian is ruling the UK.
Indian leaders in third countries often tend to overcompensate for their minority handicap.
Key.
For example, Sunak's Home Secretary of Indian origin, Suella Braverman, disapproved of India-UK free trade because it would encourage people immigrating to the UK, and the majority of whom were Indians. Structurally, India and UK have passed baggage, but still hasn't been resolved. And that is why,
ladies and gentlemen, India needs to significantly temper its expectations from Rishi Sunak. Presenting Vantage with me, Palki Sharma, a first-of-its-kind global show with an Indian perspective.
Mismanaged vaccination drive, broken healthcare systems, citizens taking matters into their own hands. India's failure in managing the COVID-19 crisis is staggering.
Want stories but without the West spin on it? Presenting Vantage with me, Palki Sharma, a first-of-its-kind global show with an Indian perspective.